I believe the line between AI generated content and human generated content is the human owns the argument. The agent owns the permutation. And what I mean by that is, if you think about it in terms of different types of content, ultimately, I think the human owns the deep dive, expert, single source of truth, bespoke content that gets created. But then how you slice and dice that content for different channels, I think that's the role that AI can really play, which is take that single source of truth and then give me 100 different variations of it in short form order that I can put across all of my channels.
Welcome to Frank Growth. I'm Jason Shafton. I run the growth consulting firm Winston Francois. Around here, we tell the truth about growing, the good, the bad, and the can't say it out loud ugly. Every episode, we get tactical with operators, investors, and builders about what works, what breaks, and what to do next. No fluff, no vanity metrics, no hustle theater, just signal. This is Frank Growth. Let's get into it. Today, we've got Dave Steer, the 90-day rebrand. Before we bring Dave on, a quick riff on today's topic. Every marketing leader right now has the same mandate landing on their desk. Become AI native. Most of them are handling it badly. Here are 3 things that I see go wrong. First, treating AI as a headcount problem, cutting the team and hoping the tool fills the gap, instead of raising the bar on the humans who are left. Second, bolting AI onto the old org chart. AEO or GEO gets dumped on the SEO person instead of becoming everyone's job. And third, repositioning with a new deck instead of a new story, swapping the buzzwords on the website without changing what the company actually stands for. Here's what actually works. First, cut headcount, raise the writing bar. AI repurposes. It does not originate. The humans left need to be better, not just fewer. Second, make AI discovery a company-wide function, not a bolt-on to SEO. And finally, run positioning as a company-wide exercise, not a marketing memo. That's the frame we'll use with Dave today. Let's get tactical. So glad you're here. You spent 2 decades at GitLab, Cloudflare, Twitter, Facebook, Mozilla before stepping into the CMO seat at Webflow. You're leading brand, demand, product marketing. One thing that jumped out at me from our conversations is you walked into that seat with a 3-month mandate to relaunch the website and reposition the entire brand around AI. Most CMOs get a quarter to make a little bit of a dent. You got a quarter to remake the whole story. So let's get into it, man. Across all those experiences, what is actually different about sitting in the CMO chair now versus, being one of the kind of leaders supporting it?
It's an exciting time to be a marketing leader. It's a really exciting time to be a CMO. And it's also a very daunting time. Because if you think about it, CMOs have to be expert in like 3 things right now. They've got to be an expert at brand and storytelling. You have to be able to go deep on that. You have to be an expert in how you build and drive and accelerate pipeline. And then number 3, the third leg on the stool, is you have to be great at transformation, on transforming your team to be AI forward. And you have to be great at all 3 of those things. I don't know of any CMO that is world-class at all 3 of those things at the same time. So what I say is you have to be world-class at 2 out of the 3. And on the third is really where leadership comes in. And the old thing of hire really smart people and be really close to those smart people, but hire for the thing that you are not the expert in.
Let's talk about the mandate. You walked into this 3-month mandate to relaunch the website and reposition the entire brand. Who gave you that mandate, and why did you only have 3 months to do it?
Well, it's really what was going on in the market. The reality is I took the job, and the actual mandate, came from the board and from the leadership team. And it was driven by the fact that 3 months from my start date was Webflow Conf. This is our big category defining event. It's the place that we bring our community and customers and prospects together. And we wanted to do a repositioning of the brand, a relaunch of the website, and an advertising campaign to coincide with the event itself. And we only had 3 months to do it. So as a new marketing leader, I had to roll up my sleeves and dive in with the team and then get it done.
You were at GitLab where you launched Duo AI and led this platform positioning. At Cloudflare, you helped reposition for enterprise ahead of their IPO. There's a pattern here that you keep repeating across these category-defining brands. Talk about that.
There's something about the evolution of a company where it's going from the early market to the sort of mainstream market where you have to cross the chasm. You're swimming upstream to the enterprise, and there's a lot still to figure out. There's something about this phase of growth that I love. It's not for everybody. It's not for the faint of heart, and it can be quite painful because in order to make that transition, you have to throw out old assumptions and get new assumptions. The references that you had in the past are not necessarily the customers that are going to endorse you for the future. And so there's something about that experience at Cloudflare, that experience at GitLab, which was defining a DevSecOps category that I find really rewarding. And I find that people who work at companies like that are full of grit, they're full of curiosity, and they're the types of people I like to work with.
I love grit and curiosity. You've now embarking on this kind of repositioning with Webflow, where you've gone from a website experience platform to an agentic marketing platform. What does agentic actually mean in that sentence, stripped of, the very buzzy word that it is right now?
It's a web marketing platform in an age where the web is becoming something that lives. If you think about it, almost all of the internet, all of the web was built on an opposite assumption. So for 20 years, for 2 decades or more, we built websites like buildings. You ship it, you forget it, and then you rebuild it every 18 months. But that assumption is breaking. And we believe over here at Webflow that every digital experience should come alive and it should be continuously expanding and it should be different and personalized for everybody who engages with the brand. It's really, if you think about it, the promise of right message to right customer at right time and right channel. And so that's the agent part, is that the web is really being built now for 2 audiences, the human and the agent. And Webflow is the platform that will be the source of truth for both.
So you also did something you told me about, which is really interesting. You ran a company-wide positioning workshop with April Dunford. What did you learn from that process that you didn't expect?
So for those who don't know, April Dunford is probably the world's expert in positioning strategy. If you haven't read her book, I highly encourage. She has 2 books out. Obviously awesome, and then the sales deck version of it. So the opportunity to bring April on board for a few days to do a working session with us and help guide us through what is positioning and how we should be thinking about it became really important. The number one takeaway for me is that positioning is not a marketing activity. It's a corporate strategy activity. Now, the marketing team or the CMO typically is the guide for it as we take it through, but it is an executive staff exercise to go through, because how you position your brand for the future then translates into product strategy, go-to-market strategy, and operational strategy.
Yeah. AI-driven discovery is disrupting search and the role of the website itself. What does that mean for what a website even is for anymore?
AI-driven discovery has to use a source of truth, a record. And the role of the website not only becomes a credibility builder and a destination that both an agent and a human will go to, but what you say on the website actually matters for what AI will say about you when you're not even in the room. And we recently ran a survey, an actual study, about 2,000 websites that are out there. We call it the AEO Maturity Index. And it was really aimed at seeing among these 2,000 sites based in the US, how are they performing in AI search and, visibility, and what's driving their performance. And the results were kind of shocking. The average website got a score of about 2 or 3. But what was most fascinating was the underlying issue behind that low score was what was happening on their website, how they structured their content, how they structured the site itself. And I really love data like this because the predominant wisdom out there is just create more content and then you will improve on AEO. And what we found with our study is that content is great and what you do offsite is important, but really how you structure your website is critical in making sure that you are seen in AI engines.
Let's talk about building an AI native team for this moment that we're in. Your marketing team is 50 to 60 people that are really reorganizing around Claude and ChatGPT for everything from content, rewriting to full campaigns. Walk me through what actually changed in their day-to-day workflows.
The marketing team is getting rebuilt, not retooled. The most important principles of marketing that have been true for decades are still true today and are still true decades from now. But how we think about it, how we think about the jobs to be done of a marketing team becomes really important. And I'll give you a very important specific over here. For the past few decades, the marketing function has become extraordinarily siloed. And that is because it's a very complicated, complex function. You need experts that can go deep in each area. But the problem is that marketing tends to be a relay race. And you have one part, hands it off to the next part, that hands it off to the next part. The transformation that we're going through right now is to treat everybody like an orchestrator and everybody like a connector, such that they have the tools in front of them to go from idea to campaign or from idea to message on their own without actually having to hand over the baton to other people as much as they can.
You're treating AI answer engine optimization as a team-wide responsibility, not just an SEO function. What does that look like operationally?
Operationally, it's quite amazing. As I said, one of the biggest hurdles that any CMO has is when their team is siloed, when people feel like they don't have access to all the information that they need and there's not enough sort of like information transfer and teamwork. The reality is to win in AEO really requires marketing to be a team sport. And the reason why is because AEO is as much about what you do off of your website as on your website. So it used to be that the person who led SEO could really just focus on what can they do on the website to make sure that they're ranking in search engines. But today, that role is more like a marketing engineering role that is working across the entire team to make sure that we've got coordinated positioning, messaging, activation of that messaging off of the website, and then the important work on the website itself to make sure that it can be read by agents. And so in a lot of ways, it has to be a team sport. The other way of thinking about it is it's true integrated marketing in action, which makes it extraordinarily exciting as a CMO.
When you're building AI native skills in-house versus buying them from, outsiders, third parties, how do you decide where that line sits?
There's a balance here. There always has been a balance in marketing in terms of what you do in-house versus what you ask an agency or a third party to do. Agencies, for example, are extraordinarily important, especially as teams become AI forward, because they're pattern matching across 40 clients, not their own client. And at the same time, one of the most important things that anybody in marketing can do is roll up their sleeves and get hands on. I think the line becomes, what type of builder are you? And how do we make sure that we're equipping and enabling our team to build or to embrace the ethos of building, but still be able to focus on their primary job to be done? And so the marketing organization of the future is going to look like a balance. You're going to have people, again, who look more like go-to-market engineers and go really deeply in building out agentic workflows. And then you'll have other people who now have the empathy because they understand how these workflows work and the tool sets work, but they can essentially take the work that is being done by those other people and apply it to the craft that they have.
We want to talk about the kind of content paradox therein. This problem that you described, which is everybody is on the content team now, effectively. And you changed how you think about content at Webflow. Talk about what drove that change and how you're implementing it across the team.
I think content is one of the most important parts of the marketing manager to get right, in large part because the buyer journey requires a content engine that flows all the way through. And it used to be that as we siloed our teams and we created sub-functions, that you needed just a content marketing team who went deep to produce artifacts. I think a function like that is still important, but they act more like content strategists and orchestrators and enable other teams to create content itself. And so in that kind of transformation, you have to then kind of think through, okay, what are the really most important core capabilities that every marketer has to have? And I believe one of them has to be the ability to write. When you can write really well, you have clarified thinking. You have the ability to really think through the arguments that you're trying to make in front of the customer and then work with AI as an assistant to help you polish off the language, but you yourself still have the depth of craft to be able to create that content. That's the type of transformation that I think every marketing team is going through. Yeah. And I have 4 human roles that I'd like to point to. The first is a strategist. The person who can really go deep and understand the strategy, go-to-market strategy aligned with company strategy. The second is the orchestrator, somebody who is able to orchestrate different things that are going on in the marketing mix. But the second 2, I think, are the most important for any human that is on the marketing team. And that is the creator and the connector. The creator is the part where you are deep in your craft and you get the spark of the idea that is innately human. That's the thing that's going to connect your brand to other people. And then finally, the connector, and that's where trust is built, both with you and your customers and you as the marketer internally inside your company.
If AI is more of a repurposing tool and not this kind of sole creator pumping out AI slop, where exactly is the line between what a human writes and what AI should be touching?
The line is, mostly around judgment and craft. And so I'll put it this way. I believe the line between AI generated content and human generated content is the human owns the argument. The agent owns the permutation. And what I mean by that is, if you think about it in terms of different types of content, ultimately, I think the human owns the deep dive, expert, single source of truth, bespoke content that gets created. But then how you slice and dice that content for different channels, I think that's the role that AI can really play, which is take that single source of truth and then give me 100 different variations of it in short form order that I can put across all of my channels.
Yeah. You're leaning on some agencies and freelancers to get you fresh perspective and faster AI adoption. What can an outside partner do that the in-house team can't?
Yeah, I think this is a great time to be an agency. We're all writing the playbook, and there is no one playbook. The superpower that the agency has is that you can pattern match across 40 to 50 to 60 different clients and customers that you work with, and what you see as working and not working, and provide true value add to the customers that you work with by being able to synthesize all of those insights and bring them to the customers that you actually partner with. I call it a superpower. I really do believe it's a superpower, and I think more in-house teams are going to be looking for their agencies. Similar to what I said earlier, not to do the rote mundane work, but to be the strategic voice at the table to help us through this transformation.
Let's talk about what's next. So you're heading to Webflow Conf in Boston, you mentioned in the beginning of September. What needs to happen in that room for you?
Webflow Conf is one of the most exciting category-defining events that I've ever been at. I was at my first Webflow Conf last year. We have Webflow Conf coming up in the beginning of September in Boston. And we are with a group of customers, prospects, and community members who are all going through a tremendous amount of change in terms of what the internet and what the web looks like, and tremendous amount of change in terms of how they actually do their jobs. I am super excited to have everyone together in Boston to get a view into what we are building for them. And I can guarantee you it will be really eye-opening and really interesting for people in terms of where the internet is headed and where Webflow is headed, which is a much more code-first approach in a world where everybody can write code.
For CMOs elsewhere who were just told by their board or their founder CEO to become AI native, what's the single big mistake you see them making?
Single biggest mistake that I see them making, and I've got to confess, I started making the same error as well, is you're under a lot of pressure from your board, from your investors to become AI forward. And your first instinct is going to be two things. Thing number one, just buy a bunch of ChatGPT licenses and throw them out at people and say, go figure it out yourself. And I call that the plant 1,000 seeds, let 1,000 flowers bloom approach. It feels good in the moment, but then what ends up happening is you just get a bunch of random artifacts that have been created and all of that. And you quickly have to go into phase two, which is actually like thinking through the workflows that you want to create. The second error is you think about speed first. And this is particularly important when you think about web marketing overall. It is easy now to publish a website. That's not the hard part anymore. What is more difficult is day two and beyond. How do you use your digital experience and website to make sure that you are driving growth over the long haul? That you've got the personalization, the conversion rate optimization, you've got the right infrastructure in place so that the agents can actually read your website, but you're also catering to the humans that visit it at the same time. So the biggest error that I see is marketing leaders only thinking about day one and using AI for day one and forgetting the real job of marketing. The 99% job of marketing is not the publishing of a website. It's what happens on day two and beyond.
All right. My favorite part of the show, Dave, is this lightning round we do. So quick questions, quick answers. Are you ready?
I think I'm ready. Do you think I'm ready?
I think you're ready. One metric you look at every morning.
Marketing source pipeline. Every morning.
The AI use case in marketing that's still overhyped.
Fully autonomous content generation.
Finish this sentence for me. The marketing leader who survives an AI rebuild is the one who
is willing to be the first customer of their own transformation.
All right. All-time favorite Webflow site?
The Lando Norris site. It's a work of art, and it is one of the deepest expressions of brand that I've ever seen.
And your day-to-day AI tool of choice, Dave?
I treat Claude as my chief of staff. I am using Cowork a lot to simplify my life, to bring together disparate content. So I'm in Claude a lot of the time.
Dave, this was incredibly helpful and tactical for folks out there trying to navigate the new world order. Where can people find you and Webflow online? And I know you want to talk more about Webflow Conf, so give us all the deets.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn. I always like talking to fellow marketers about a brand and growth and the combination of the two. Just know that once you start engaging with me, I will say things like brand versus growth is not a thing. They actually operate together. And then, of course, at the beginning of September, you can find me at Boston. Boston is my hometown. I grew up in Boston. So having Webflow Conf in Boston at the beginning of September is quite a treat for me. And I can't wait to see your audience there as well.
Yeah, everybody's going to be there. It's going to be a good one. Dave, thank you so much for coming on.
Okay, it's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
That was Dave Steer, and a look at what it takes to rebuild a brand around AI in 90 days without losing the thing that made it worth rebuilding. Here are my quick top 3 from today. If you don't remember anything else, remember these. First, the human owns the argument. The agent owns the permutation. That was Dave's line, and it's the cleanest answer I've heard to the content question. The human goes deep on the bespoke single source of truth piece, the point of view, the argument you are actually making to a customer. The agent takes that one asset and cuts it 100 ways for 100 channels. Flip that order and you get slop, which is why cutting the content team and raising the writing bar is not a contradiction. If everyone in marketing is now producing, everyone in marketing has to be able to write. Writing well is just clear thinking with a deadline. Second, positioning is not a marketing activity, it is a corporate strategy activity. Dave brought in April Dunford for a company-wide working session, and the thing that surprised him was not a framework. It was who needed to be in the room. Marketing guides the process, but positioning is an executive staff exercise because how you position the brand becomes product strategy, go-to-market strategy, and operating strategy downstream. If your positioning lives in a marketing doc and the rest of the exec team has never argued about it, you don't have positioning, you have messaging. And finally, marketing teams are getting rebuilt, not retooled. For 2 decades, marketing has run like a relay race. Specialists go deep, then hand the baton to the next silo. Dave's transformation is to make everyone an orchestrator and a connector, so a person can go from idea to campaign without 3 handoffs. He named 4 human roles that survived the rebuild: strategist, orchestrator, creator, and connector. The last 2 matter most. The creator is where the spark comes from. The connector is where trust gets built with customers and inside your own company. Neither one is a tool purchase. Here's one action you can take this week in 10 minutes or less. Open the AI assistant your buyers actually use. Ask it the question your best prospect would ask about your category, the one where you should be the obvious answer. Read what it says about you when you're not in the room. If you're missing or wrong or generic, the fix is usually not more content. It is how your site is structured and whether an agent can read it at all. That's Frank Growth. If this gave you something you can use this week, follow the show and share it with one operator or founder who needs it. I'm Jason Shafton from Winston Francois. We help tech companies build sustainable, repeatable growth with a proven operating system. Show notes and takeaways are in the description. Be frank and keep growing.